But we had the reaction to today was just cuckery from everybody. You know, Senator Rand Paul tweeted out, "Violence and mob rule is wrong and un-American. And it will not bring about election reform." Who said anything about election reform? "Today's mayhem sets back any intelligent debate for a generation. Just stop it." Who said anything about intelligent debate? I watched those debates that they had in the House today. Here's how debates go, and this isn't just today. Anyone that's watched one of these Senate hearings will know exactly what I'm fucking talking about. And I've watched hours upon fucking hours. And it doesn't matter if it's because they're talking to Christopher Wray for being a complete worthless piece of shit, top of the FBI, or if they're talking to Comey, or any of these others, the fucking disgraces to the country, or if they're just talking about what the tax on popcorn should be. It doesn't fucking matter. Anytime you watch one of these fucking hearings or these debates, it's the same thing over and over again. On the right, you got the usual suspects. They sound real good, right? They give you a lot of good sound bites. You know, lots of shareable sound bites that end up on Twitter, like, "Oh, base Ted Cruz, like he really stuck it to Jack from Twitter," but nothing happens. But they put on a good show, and they're factual, right? Like, they'll bring up the actual issues, they'll bring up facts, which is why it becomes viral, right? They say the kinds of things you want them to say. And then on the other side of the aisle, what do the Democrats do? They don't even respond to the facts at all. They don't respond. It's like they just filibuster. They talk about something completely different. Today in the hearing, when they're talking about the Philadelphia votes, you'd have a Republican talk about, like, look, constitutionally, and this is right, by the way. I don't care if you think there was fraud or not. Actually, it's kind of irrelevant. But constitutionally, the legislative body of the state, in this case, Pennsylvania, has to determine the manner in which elections are held. And in this time around, that wasn't the case. You had the Pennsylvania Supreme Court make drastic changes to the way in which the election was going to be held just literally days before the election was held, with no legislative input. And it's black and white in the Constitution that that's not the way things are done. That's just the way it is. And it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter if there was fraud or not. It is unconstitutional for the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania to unilaterally just decide how the election is held. That's just the way it is. And in that context, especially because the United States Supreme Court decided not to hear it because they knew that they'd have to rule the way, they'd have to rule on it. So they decided just not even to hear it because they knew how they'd have to rule on it. And so in this case, the last line of defense was this completely valid, normal, legal, constitutional process in which you have the House and the Senate debate as to whether or not you take the votes. But because I'd seen so many of these debates, so many of these Senate committee meetings, and just seeing these people who are not accountable for anything ever, because who's going to hold them accountable? Their constituents aren't. We're talking people like the representatives themselves are like 80 IQ in some instances. So no one holds them accountable. So when it comes to the turn of the Democrats, you'll have a Republican representative talk about, like, look, legally speaking, this is how it has to go. Legally speaking, doesn't matter how you like it. It doesn't matter really if there's any fraud at all. Legally speaking, these are invalid because of the way that the election was compromised, I guess, by these changes made by the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania. So it really doesn't matter if there was fraud or not. It really doesn't, legally speaking. And so you had representative after representative explain this, reading the part of the Constitution that spells it out. And it's not that complicated. And when it got to be the Democrats' turn, they would talk about nonsense. They would either talk about platitudes, like literally meaningless platitudes about democracy, and it's, democracy is... Never, ever fucking address the actual issue. In some instances, these guys didn't even talk about the election at all. You had a couple of them just talk about fucking vaccines and COVID-19. And it doesn't matter because people are fucking stupid. The American people are fucking stupid. And there's no mechanism. Well, I guess there is, but there's no political or legal mechanism that puts these guys in check. And that I expected. That I 100% expected. What I didn't quite expect, because I thought that the cucking was so bad already and there was no real path to victory. What I didn't expect was that you'd have senators like Lindsey Graham take this as an opportunity to essentially welcome Biden into the White House and blame it all on the violence. Like, well, these wild conspiracy theories driving people crazy. It's not what we're doing. It's certainly not what we're doing that's making people crazy. It's these wild conspiracy theories about voter fraud. And don't you know, just like Senator Rand Paul would say, violence and mob rule, it's wrong and it's un-American. It'll not bring about election reform. Election reform. And over, I saw this coming out of the mouths of so-called conservatives and civic nationalists and just MAGA grifters in general. The same kind of a thing. Oh, it's going to set us back decades. This is the new Charlottesville. But as Stefan Molyneux once said, the time for arguments is over. I think today, of all days, proved that. If not this whole last fucking year. I don't remember when BLM and Antifa burned down America for an entire summer this last summer. I don't remember any Democrats saying, oh, don't do that. That's going to set us back decades. It's un-American. I don't remember any of them saying that. I remember them saying the exact opposite. That's because the Democrats play to win. And they do win. They just won. The GOP plays to lose. The GOP plays to get rich. The GOP plays to get invited to fancy parties. Saying that this was a setback. Oh my God, it's a setback. That's like saying 9/11 was a setback for fucking Zionists. The Boston Tea Party was a setback for the founding fathers.
Prosecution of felon, gangster, mafiotic, negroidic, the Black Frank Gelada, a gangster judge, therefore unprosecutable. The blackish, menial, negroidic in appearance and demeanor, felon, vicious, parroting puppet, ex-district attorney Nassau County, can watch my Frankenstein eyesight television playback of this felonious, lowly, sodomistic display by the felon, sodomist Judge William Sullivan and his lowly felon slut wife during my trial in Nassau.